So if you rotate them around x-axis, you can make the owl really surprised, or like really sleepy, or like angry or something. You can tilt them even this way. Hey everyone, welcome to my new tutorial. Today we are going to create this stylized owl inspired by my recent Hogwarts Express design, and I really hope you will enjoy this one, and if you do, please don't forget to leave that like. And if you're new to the world of 3D and Blender and you want to learn in the most effective way, be sure to check out my courses. I carefully designed them to take you from beginner skills through low poly illustrations all the way to full character illustration, and with the latest one even textured environment. So if you're interested, please check out the link in the description. Now let's jump right into empty Blender file, and first of all let's just select the light here, press X and delete, and we'll use the default cube yet again. So let's just select it and we'll model the body first. So let's tab into the edit mode, and first let's press Ctrl R and create a loop cut right here in the middle, right click to release, and now press S to scale it up. Now let's look from the side by pressing 3 on a numpad, and let's enable X-ray view, and let's select the bottom vertices here, press R and rotate them a little bit, and press G to move them. So we'll be extruding the body a little bit further away, so let's press E to extrude and S to scale, and again we'll rotate this a little bit and move it back like this. And finally, one last extrusion. You can also hold Ctrl and hit right click and press S to scale it down. And now we'll need to scale things on X-axis a little bit. So let's alt click this loop right here, press S, then X, and scale it up. Of course, we'll modify these proportions a little bit later. So let's just continue and let's look from the side, tab out of the edit mode, and let's press Shift A and we'll add another cube, and press G then Z and move it up like this. And now tab into the edit mode, select the bottom vertices, and we're still in the X-ray mode, and press S to scale it up. Okay, and this will allow us to create the head, very stylized one at that. And now tab out and we'll add some subdivision modifiers. So press Ctrl 1, or you can just go ahead and in the modifiers panel add the subdivision right here. And let's do the same thing here. So now we can move this down and adjust the proportions a little bit better. So I can see this is a little bit too narrow, so let's select the body, tab in, and we can scale this loop up, and this one as well, so it's more chunky, and probably move this towards the front a little bit, and here let's move this back. Okay, I think this will work. And now let's make this larger. So tab into the edit mode and let's scale it up, tab out and press G then Z to move it up. So you will probably need to play a lot with these proportions to make it look good in the end. I will probably update these proportions as we go a few times because this is not an exact method. You will kind of need to follow your guts on this. So let's now shift and right click here, and we'll create the base for the wing. So let's press Shift A and let's add a plane. Now tab into the edit mode, press R, then Y and 90 to rotate this 90 degrees. And let's look from the side by pressing 3 on a numpad. Let's scale this down. Now let's press Ctrl R to create a loop cut here in the middle. Right click to release, and let's scale it up a little bit. Now select the bottom verts, press R to rotate and S to scale. Let's move it with G. Now extrude with E and press S to scale it down. So, and again, we'll see how this looks when we apply subdivision surface. So let's modify the shape a little bit here. Let's move it towards the front here. Now let's look from the front, and of course we'll need to make this more rounded. So let's bring it closer like this. And now press A to select all and E to extrude. Now tab out, and again we'll press Ctrl 1 to add subdivision surface, and you will see the result. And it's apparent that we can make this a little bit larger, so let's select these verts, press G then X and move them out a little bit, and same for these. And let's look from the front, and I will select all of these inside, press G then X and move them closer like that, and make the whole thing larger. Okay, and now let's go ahead and let's add the mirror modifier, and let's choose the owl body as the center for mirroring. And I think these proportions will look nicely and will work fine. And now let's hold Shift S and reset cursor to world origin. Let's press Shift A and we'll add a cylinder. Now let's modify the vertices to something low like 12. Press R, then Y and 90 to rotate this 90 degrees. Tab into the edit mode, let's look from the front and press S to make this smaller, and S then X and extrude it and make it larger like this. Now we can tab out and move it down, and basically this will be like a branch the owl is sitting on. We won't be doing any like legs or something like that. We'll just place the owl on the branch like this, so it kind of looks like the legs are buried within the feathers down there. So I think this will look just fine. And press Ctrl R here in the edit mode, increase the number of cuts with the mouse wheel and confirm, and we'll make these endpoints a little bit larger, stylized and cartoonish like this. Okay, and maybe rotate this a little bit. Okay, works just fine. And let's now figure out what to do with the head. So first of all, let me apply the subdivision here. Make sure you have only one levels in the viewport, and just hit apply right here. And let's do the same for the head, and let's do the same for the wings right here. Hit apply, so we have this mesh available. And let's now exit the X-ray view. And for the head, let's tab into the edit mode. Let's select the front vertex, press G, then Y, and move it back a little bit. So we make this a little bit more flat, and let's move this one back as well. Now tab out and we'll press Ctrl 2 to add subdivision surface. And that's the one we actually gonna use. So we can press G, then Z, move this down a little bit, even more. And maybe let's make the head higher like this. And let's add the same modifier here, so Ctrl 2, and for the wings as well. And now I can see we can definitely bring them closer towards the body like this and make them more wide here. So press O to enable proportional editing, press G then X and move them out like this, and adjust the fall off with the mouse wheel. Okay, and right here towards the end we can bend them out like this. Okay, so let's hold Shift and right click here, and let's press Shift A and we'll add a circle. And now let's modify this to something like 12 again. Tab into the edit mode, press R, then X and rotate 90 degrees. Let's confirm, and I will disable proportional editing, and let's make this smaller. Let's look from the front, and you can kind of see how large this will be in relation to the head. So let's tab out and move it to the side a little bit, and you can right away add mirror modifier with the head for the center of mirroring, so you can see what you are doing. Now let's look from the top by pressing 7 on a numpad, and let's rotate this a little bit like this, and we can bring it closer together. Now tap into the edit mode, and we can press F to fill, I for inset, and let's just press G then Y and bring it out like this. And now press I again and press G then Y and push it back. And now hold Alt, select the outer ring and press E then Y to extrude and S to scale. So we have something like this here. Now we can tab out, press Ctrl 2 to add subdivision surface. And to make this more rounded, we can play with the proportions. So let's make this larger and push it back a little bit. And of course, let's look from the front, select this one and move it out alongside with this. So we get more of these like owl eyebrows. And we can of course move this back a little bit so it's tilted like this. Okay, I think this will work nicely. Let's move it down a little bit and maybe even closer together. And now let's move this towards the front. And now let's hold Shift S and snap cursor to select it, tab out, and let's press Shift A and we'll add a UV sphere like this. And now tab into the edit mode, press S to scale it down. Something like this should work. Now press R, then X and 90 degrees tab out and press G then Y and move it back. So we're creating eyes right now. And again, we'll add mirror modifier and select the head as the center for mirroring. And let's move this closer. And I think this can go back a little bit like this. Okay, I think this will work just fine. So let's hold Shift S, snap cursor to select it. And let's press Shift D to duplicate this. Press R, then Z and 90 degrees. So we duplicated the sphere and rotated 90 degrees. So we can now tab into the edit mode, press 1 to look from the front. Let's toggle the X-ray, or you can find it right here. Let's hit 1 for the vertex select. Let's zoom in and we'll just select all of these vertices down bottom and press X and delete those vertices. So now we can tab out and let's toggle the X-ray again. Now let's add solidify modifier. Let's collapse this and let's increase the thickness to minus something. So we have something like this. And now you can press R, then X, and just control these eyelids however you want. And of course, you can press Shift D to duplicate this and rotate it to the bottom as well. So you have some at the bottom, but sometimes it can look like these eyes are really tired. So I'll probably use only the top eyelids in this case, and to better see the difference between like an iris and the lentils, let's extrude this a little bit. And now right click and shade smooth. And we can do the same smooth shading for other objects as well. So select them one by one, right click and shade smooth. Okay, this is coming up nicely. So let's create the beak right now. I will select the head, tab into the edit mode, select for example this vertex here in the middle, hold Shift S and snap cursor to select it, tab out, and let's press Shift A and we'll add a plane, tab into the edit mode, let's make this smaller, and of course we'll need some X-ray here. Let's look from the front, press R, then X and 90 degrees, and let's make this even smaller. Now we'll extrude this, make it larger, extrude once again, and let's look from the side by pressing 3 on a numpad, and let's move it down like this. And now select the bottom 4 and press E to extrude and make it smaller. So this should work nicely as a shape for the beak. Now let's toggle the X-ray again and press Ctrl 2 to add subdivision surface, and right click and shade smooth. And of course we can now work with the shape. So let's make this a little bit wider and let's move this up tiny bit. And now press A to select all and press S to make whole thing a little bit larger. And we can tab out, press G then Z and move it down here and place it right here. Press R then X to rotate on X axis. And you know, again we can play with the shape a little bit. Okay, I think this works nicely. So in terms, let me make these eyes a little bit larger and this as well. Okay, so in terms of shapes, this is quite all right. Now it's time for the feathers, and there are multiple ways how to do this, but in this like a really stylized approach, I will basically just go ahead and place feathers one by one and snapping on the surface, and we'll create really like large chunky feathers to really only like suggest the type of the surface there, that these are feathers, but we won't be creating like detailed feathered surface or anything like this. So let's press Shift A and let's create a plane, press G then Z, move it up. Now tab into the edit mode, press S to scale it down, and like this. Let's look from the top and select these two birds and scale them up, and now press E then Y to extrude them. Let's make this smaller, press E then Y again and again scale it down. And let's look from the side, and now we can enable X-ray again, select these and move them up a little bit, but make sure you curve this down below like the level where the origin point is. Okay, something like this should work nicely. And now press A to select all and Alt E and extrude along normals. And we can again look from the side by pressing 3 and select these verts and move them around like this. And here we can make it more narrow. And now tab out, press Ctrl 2 to add subdivision surface. And basically we can make it a little bit wider here as well. Okay, works just fine. Tab out, disable the X-ray, right click shade smooth. And now let's look from the front. And now we'll just go ahead and change snapping to face project and align rotation to target with individual elements. This might look a little bit different in Blender 4, but the same options are there, believe me. It can be set up exactly the same way. So press G and hold Ctrl and snap it right here. But now this is snapping from the other side because probably these normals are messed up a little bit because we extruded this from the circle. So tab into the edit mode, press A to select all and Shift N to recalculate normals. And now if you do the same thing, it will snap correctly. So now let's snap it like this. Let's look from the front and press R then Z twice. They'll enable rotation on the local Z axis and just move it around like this, make it smaller maybe. And of course we'll go ahead and add mirror modifier and again choose head as the center for mirroring, and now you can see how this works. And now let's press Alt D to create a link duplicate, hold Ctrl and snap another one. And we can again press R then Z twice to rotate and make it larger. And let's do another one like this and another one. And I think this is too far from the origin point. So what we can do is tab into the edit mode, press A to select all and press G then Z twice to move it, and you will see all of them move because they are link duplicates, so they are closer to the origin point. And now you can press R and X twice for each of these to move them around like this. And let's make this smaller. Okay, works just fine. And let's make this one even smaller. Okay, so this will work fine. And now let's just go ahead and add some of these around. So I'll Alt D again and snap this on a head for a change. Maybe make this larger a little bit. And of course, you don't need to add them everywhere. The goal of this is to just suggest that this surface is made out of feathers, so you can see how you can basically make these distances between them larger and larger and the feathers smaller, so they kind of like disappear into the surface. And I think this will work just fine. So let's place some of these here. And now let's just move on and create some of these on the wings as well. Of course, we can tilt them back a little bit. So you can always just press R and then axis twice if you want to rotate around the local axis. Okay, and now let's move some of these here in the back as well, so we don't have just a flat surface there. And if you want, you can disable the mirror on some of these to have like a single feather here and there. Okay, you probably get my point. You just need to go around and, you know, apply the feathers where you think they will look good. When you finally add material, it will help to blend it all together, of course. And now let's add some bevel modifier here. Increase number of segments, press Ctrl 2 to add subdivision, right click, shade smooth. And now let's hold Shift S, snap cursor to wall origin. Let's press Shift A, it will create a plane as a background. Press G then Z, move it down. And let's make it larger like this, and this is probably the angle I'm going for, so let's hold Ctrl and Alt and hit 0 on a numpad to move the camera there. And let's select the camera, press G then Z twice to move it out, and now we can scale up the background a little bit. Press Ctrl B to limit the preview only for the camera bounce. And in the render settings, switch to cycles. I will enable GPU and the noising and reduce the samples. And I will switch here for optics because I have NVIDIA GPU. So if you have the same, it will be probably the fastest. And now let's hold Z and switch to rendered. And of course, we'll need to add some light. So let's press Shift A and add area light. Move it up. Let's make it larger. And I will ramp this up to something like 150, maybe even 500, and move it around like this. And now for the materials, this will probably be mostly the white color, so let's go ahead and let's add the material here. Let's call this owl, and we'll go for full roughness and some subsurface. So let's enter something like 0.05, and for the radius something like 0.1, and let's add the same material to all of the white surfaces here. The beak will be black, so let's modify it and let's give this a little bit less roughness like this. Now all of the feathers now have the same material because they were link duplicates, so just make sure you add the same to the head and to the body and to the wings. Okay, and let's give this some like dark natural brown color, maybe a little bit desaturated, and let's increase the roughness. And for the eyes, let's go for like a yellow color so they really stand out, and let's go down with roughness. And let's tap into the edit mode, and now we can hit Ctrl+ to expand the selection and create a new one, and hit new and click assign. And now let's just modify it to black, and let's go down with the roughness as well here. And basically that's it. And now you can see how these feathers blend a little bit better. Sometimes it might be a little bit too far from the underlying object, so just make sure you place them maybe a little bit lower, or you can do this globally if you want. You can just like before bring the whole geometry closer to the origin point along the local z-axis and make it look a little bit tighter like this. Okay, and yeah, basically now it's all about like lighting and choosing some background color. Let me increase the roughness. And with the characters like this, you can press Shift A and add a spotlight, move it up, and let's ramp this really up, like 3000 or something like that. And then you can hold period on the keyboard and switch to 3D cursor and press R twice to enable trackball rotation and position the spotlight from the side and from the back like this to create this rim light around your character. But make sure you go down so you don't affect your background like this. Bring it up a little bit, and you can go even higher, something like 5000, and bring it closer if you wish. So you have this nice rim light from the back, and you can of course play with the color if you want. And now we can bring one more light from the side here. Let's switch to the median point and just rotate it towards the character a little bit. And maybe a little bit more from the side, like this. Okay, and maybe we can make it a little bit warmer here, like this. And now in the world settings, let's give this some color to blend it all together. Okay, and finally maybe a little backlight on the background there. So something really strong, like 1500 behind the owl, with some color to make it stand out. Okay, works just fine. And finally, in the render settings, in the color management, let's increase the contrast and play with the exposure. And maybe this needs to be a little bit darker. And now you can play with the expressions a little bit. So the eyelids do a lot of work here. So if you rotate them around x-axis, you can make the owl really surprised, or like really sleepy, or like angry or something. You can tilt them even this way to make her really angry or like really sad. So really the eyelids will do a lot of work here. So that's it for today's illustration tutorial. I really hope you enjoyed this one, and again, if you did, please leave that like, and if you're new around here, hit that subscribe. Thank you all for watching and have a wonderful day.